Hello everybody, this is Ensign Rickey, your YouTube resident redshirt, and welcome back to the Lower Decks. And in today's video, I'm going to be continuing on with my Ensign's review series. But this is a very special video today because I am sad, absolutely devastated to announce that we have lost yet another great Star Trek actor, Aron Eisenberg, at the young age of 50. Now, for you guys who don't know who Aron Eisenberg was, he was the actor that played the young Ferengi Nog on all 7 seasons of Deep Space Nine. And this does kind of hit me on a personal level because I've actually had the chance to talk to Aron over the last several months via Zoom about his experiences on the show. As I have stated in the past, I am a Patreon supporter of the 7th Rule podcast. Now, what the 7th Rule podcast is a podcast/web series that was hosted by Aron Eisenberg, as well as Cirroc Lofton, who played Jake on Deep Space Nine, and they would review episodes of Star Trek and Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and sometimes even bring guest visitors such as Nana Visitor, who played Kira, and Armin Shimmerman on the show, who played Quark, and get their experiences and insights as well. This was amazing, and I implore anybody who is a fan of Star Trek, and especially a fan of Deep Space Nine, to go and give the 7th Rule podcast a listen and check out. Because right now, more than ever, they need your support. Now, as far as Aron Eisenberg as a person, he was always a very kind and thoughtful dude. Anytime we would do our Patrons Roundtable, we would hang out with him and Cirroc, and it would be the great time. He would tell us about his stories and how he worked on the show, stories between him and the other actors. It was an awesome time, and he was always thoughtful, listened to us, listened to our stories, always, cared about what we thought. Very inspirational dude, always trying to make the world a better place, and is definitely going to be sad without him. Now, the 7th Rule podcast said they will probably go on without him, and I hope they do, because they do have something special. And that's why I tell everybody, go check him out, support him. Also, this is a hard time for Aron's widow and his children. So if you are able to, please consider donating and helping him out with funeral costs and all the other stuff attached to it. I'm going to leave links in the comments below that you can go and help out Aron's family. So, for today's video review, I will be breaking down and discussing what I consider to be Aron's best performance of Nog in Deep Space Nine. Now, Aron himself has commented that this is his best performance in Deep Space Nine, as well as probably his whole career. So, in honor of a friend, let's take a look, shall we, into the 3rd season Deep Space Nine episode, Heart of Stone.
Dangerous mission, and it's likely one of us will be killed. The landing party will consist of myself, Mr. Spock, Dr. McCoy, and Ensign Rickey.
Ah, crap.
Air date and episode number. This episode is the 348th episode of Star Trek that was produced. It was also the 59th episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine that was produced. This episode is from the show's 3rd season, and it first aired on February 6, 1995. In the Star Trek timeline, this episode takes place on Stardate 48521.5, and after some searching, Stardate 48521.5 calculates out into the July of the year 2371. So, today, our story begins in July of the year 2371. Directors, writers, and special guest actors. This episode was directed by Alexander Singer. Singer is a veteran Star Trek director of some serious note, so let's dive in. Alexander Singer is an American director, and his career spanned for over 50 years. Singer has directed projects in both television and in film. Singer is a New York native and was born in 1928. In 1951, he began his career as a cinematographer on a short documentary called Day of the Flight. This was directed by his high school friend at the time, Stanley Kubrick. It would only be 10 years later in the 1960s when Singer himself would turn to directing with his debut film, A Cold Wind in August. Throughout the 1960s, Singer would continue directing in television. In the 1970s, Singer would direct a couple more films, Captain Apache in 1971, and Glass Houses in 1972. The latter, which I had mentioned, was a book-film adaptation originally written by Singer's wife, Judith Singer. However, after this short stint of films in the 1970s, Singer would continue to direct exclusively only for television. From the 1980s up until the late 1990s until he retired, Singer would have a pretty significant and extensive directing career. Singer is credited with directing over 80 different television shows during his 50-year run. He then retired shortly after his time with Star Trek Voyager in 1998. Singer himself is no stranger to Star Trek and is credited with directing some quite noteworthy episodes during his time with the franchise. His last episode before Heart of Stone was in DS9's second season with the episode Second Sight. And then we will see him again in DS9 in the third season episode Distant Voices. Singer's first offering into the Star Trek universe was no pushover either. Singer first came into Star Trek during the TNG era with a bang, directing what is considered to be one of the best episodes of TNG ever, Relics. This episode is from early on in TNG's sixth season and is possibly one of the best series crossover episodes in Trek. It involves Chief Engineer Montgomery Scott from Star Trek's original series. This episode is perhaps only rivaled by the Kirk-Picard pairing of the TNG movie Generations. Singer explains that Relics was a huge cinematic challenge. Singer mentioned that he was a huge fan of the original series and wanted to work on it also. He explains that he met Gene Roddenberry because he was working directly across the lot from him at Desilu Studios. This was during the filming of Star Trek's original series, but for one reason or another, he said it never worked out. But as fate would have it, Singer would get his chance to direct Star Trek, but instead in the 24th century respectively. Singer would go on to direct 21 more episodes of Star Trek over all three Star Trek series placed in the 24th century, TNG, DS9, and Voyager. However, Singer would retire from directing shortly after Star Trek Voyager in 1998. Other than Star Trek, Singer has worked on such projects as The Monkees, Mission Impossible, Glass Houses, Police Story, Hill Street Blues, Cagney and Lacey, and Walker, Texas Ranger. This episode was written by two huge names in Star Trek, Ira Steven Behr and Robert Hewitt Wolfe. These are two very important people to Trek, so let's start with the man who took over the show as executive producer from seasons 3 to 7, Ira Steven Behr. Ira Steven Behr is an American screenwriter, producer, and author, and his career spans over 40 years. He has written and produced projects for television and for film. Ira is a New York native and was born into a Jewish family. In the 1970s, he attended Lehman College in New York, and his studies were in mass communications and theater. He was offered a playwriting scholarship to Brandeis University, but Ira declined the offer. Later in the 1980s, he decided to move to Los Angeles and try his hand at screenwriting comedies for television. But it wasn't in comedy where Ira made his mark. It was drama. Ira's first official writing job was in the drama series Bret Maverick, and he would continue to work on writing television drama throughout the 80s. However, Ira wouldn't just try his hand at screenwriting and stop there. He would also begin to start producing television as well. He would continue to write and produce television throughout the 80s, working on projects such as Fame. And then in the 1990s, Ira was working as a staff writer for the show Beyond Reality. And then a friend of Ira's, the legendary Michael Piller, asked Ira to help him run the staff over at Star Trek for TNG. Michael Piller is also a very important person to Star Trek. He was brought aboard TNG during its second season to help supervise the show's writers. Ira agreed to help Piller, but came aboard as a writer-supervisor. TNG at the time was a complete mess, with many people often getting fired or hired at a moment's notice, and sometimes with little to no warning. There were many conflicts between Gene, the studio, and the production staff. The new writing staff was adjusting to Michael Piller, being the new showrunner because the previous showrunner, Maurice Hurley, had just left the position. His first task was to rewrite the TNG episode The Haunted. and make it work. Ira would continue to supervise the writer's room, often becoming the middleman between the writers and Michael Piller. Eventually, Ira would ultimately leave TNG at the end of Season 3, only returning once to work on the teleplay and the story for the TNG episode Cupid. However, upon creation of Deep Space Nine in 1992, Ira would once get called back into action by Michael Piller, who was spearheading the show with Star Trek executive producer Rick Berman. So, Ira returned to Trek under a few different conditions. First, Ira was to be poised to take over as showrunner, or executive producer, in the show's third season. Since Ira knew that Michael Piller was not a person that made false promises and always kept to his word, Ira accepted the deal. Also, Gene Roddenberry had died, and the concept of the show was to be very different from the TNG setting or any Roddenberry Star Trek ventures. Because of the success of TNG past its third season, a new golden age of Star Trek was in full effect. The second golden age of Star Trek was otherwise known as the Berman Era. Ira would indeed become the showrunner of Deep Space Nine at the end of its third season, directly after the DS9 episode The Adversary. On a side note, this is also the episode where Commander Sisko gets promoted to Captain Sisko. So, not only did Sisko get a promotion, but Ira did as well. A double promotion, if you will. Ira would produce DS9 until the series ended in 1989. Post DS9, Ira would continue to work in television, producing and writing. During the 2000s, he would help produce Dark Angel with fellow Star Trek alumni Renee Echevarria, as well as other shows such as The Twilight Zone and The 4400. And then in 2014, Ira would work with fellow Star Trek alumni Ronald D. Moore on a novel-to-television adaptation of the series Outlander, written by Diana Gabaldon. The book series consists of 8 books currently. So far, the show has been a book-to-season format, much like The Expanse by James S. A. Corey, with Book 5, or Season 5, about to debut. So, if you want to see what Ira and Ron were up to in the last few years, check out the series Outlander. On a personal note, the intro music is super catchy, and it's not a bad show. After Outlander, Ira was deep into producing our beloved DS9 documentary, What We Left Behind, and it was phenomenal. If you are a DS9 fan and haven't seen this documentary, you are really missing out. It's the first documentary I never wanted to end. I could have just sat there for 6 more hours if they stretched it that long. Ira and the crew did an absolutely amazing job, and in the light of the recent passing of Aron Eisenberg, this documentary holds an even deeper meaning for many. Ira has a lot of Trek credits as a writer and producer. So, in addition to helping produce 18 episodes of TNG and producing all 176 episodes of DS9, Ira also has 56 writing credits, 3 in TNG for the time he spent there, and 53 for the episodes of DS9. Post-Trek, Ira has also penned a Star Trek book along with fellow writer-producer Robert Hewitt Wolfe called Legends of the Ferengi. He also wrote a book, The Rules of Acquisition, detailing the sacred Ferengi code of life and business ethics. If you love DS9 as much as I do, then you'll love my man Ira, who is, in my opinion, the best showrunner Star Trek ever had. He is responsible for the many great things that DS9 represents throughout Star Trek history. Other than Star Trek, Ira has worked on such projects as Fame, Dark Angel, The 4400, Dr. Vegas, Crash, The Alphas, and Outlander. And for our second writer on this episode, we have Robert Hewitt Wolfe. Wolfe is another hard hitter in the Star Trek universe, so let's take a look. Robert Hewitt Wolfe is an American producer, screenwriter, and author, and his career has spanned for almost 30 years. Wolfe has produced and written projects for television, film, and novels. Wolfe was born in Connecticut into a military family. His father was a career military officer, and his mother was a nurse, so the family traveled extensively during his childhood. During the 1970s, the Wolfe family decided to stop moving and settled in San Francisco, California. As a child, Wolfe was a heavy writer and tried to complete several novels with little success, but this didn't stop him at all. In the 1980s, Wolfe would attend and graduate from UCLA, receiving a bachelor's degree in film and television, and also an MFA in screenwriting. Wolfe's first screenplay, which was titled Paper Dragons, placed second in the Goldwyn Awards. The Goldwyn Writing Award is part of a competitive writing competition open to all UCLA students. Many famous writers and filmmakers competed and won the Goldwyn Challenge while they attended college at UCLA. It is considered a very prestigious award, and then in the 1990s, Wolf would finally get his big shot at television by selling his story for the TNG episode A Fistful of Datas in 1992. Needless to say that his TNG episode was a complete success, and it wasn't too long after that when he was approached to join the writing staff of the upcoming Star Trek series Deep Space Nine. Wolf joined the DS9 staff and eventually became a producer on the show as well. However, after the show's 5th season, Wolf would leave DS9 and Star Trek altogether to continue his career further. He would return to DS9 only one more time to write the 7th season episode, Field of Fire. This would be his last Star Trek credit from a live-action series. Other than this, Wolf helped write a book with fellow Star Trek alumni Ira Steven Behr named Legends of the Ferengi. Wolf also appears in the DS9 documentary What We Left Behind during the Writer's Room segments. Wolf also appears in the 5th season DS9 episode Call to Arms as a wounded Starfleet officer boarding the Defiant. Post-Trek, Wolf has also had quite a career. After he left DS9 in its 5th season, Wolf would help develop and produce yet another Gene Roddenberry piece, Andromeda. Even though Wolf is credited throughout the whole series as developing it, he left the show in the middle of its 2nd season. And then a few years later, after he left Andromeda, Wolf would once again join Ira Steven Behr in helping him produce the series The 4400 as a consulting producer. After his work on The 4400, Wolf would then team up once again with fellow Star Trek writer-producer Hans Beimler to develop the novel-to-television series The Dresden Files, written by the author Jim Butcher. The Dresden Files was canceled after its first seasons, and the fans tried to fight to get it back on TV. The two would also team up to produce a television movie named Scarlet in 2006. Wolf would then work on another couple projects after working on the Dresden Files, teaming up again with Ira Steven Behr in 2011 to help produce the television series The Alphas. Currently, Wolf was just working as an executive producer and writer for the Sherlock Holmes-based television series Elementary, which just ended in its 7th season. Wolf joined Elementary in the show's 2nd season and produced it into the show's end a little earlier this year. Other than his work in television, Wolf is also an author and currently has 2 novels under his belt, with a 3rd on the way. His first novel, The Goblin Crown, was released in 2016, and then 2 years later, he would release The Fallen Star, Billy Smith and the Goblins, in 2018. His next novel is expected to drop next year. You can really see that even after Star Trek, many of these writers and producers still work together on many projects with each other. Other than Star Trek, Wolf has worked on such projects as Andromeda, The 4400, The Dresden Files, The Alphas, Star-Crossed, and Elementary. For our special guest actor in this episode, we get Salome Jens, reprising her role as the Dominion's head founder changeling. Salome is no stranger to Star Trek, so let's take a look. Salome Jens is an American actress, and her career spans over 60 years. Jens has acted in roles on television, the movies, on stage, and in voice acting. Jens is a Wisconsin native born in Milwaukee. Her parents were farmers, so she grew up on a farm. In the 1950s, Jens would attend Northwestern University, majoring in dramatics. She was also a student of the legendary dance instructor Martha Graham. She also studied acting in New York at HB Studio. Jens would start her career in stage productions, making her debut in 1956 in a play called Sixth Finger in a Five-Finger Glove. And then 2 years later, in 1958, she would make her first major film debut in the sci-fi movie Terror from the Year 5000. This movie was later riffed on in the 8th season of Mystery Science Theater 3000. And then in the 1960s, her career started to seriously take off as she appeared in many different television, film, and stage productions. And then in the 1970s, up until present day, Jens has been an absolute workhorse and was still acting recently up until 2016. She would land many recurring roles throughout her television career on shows such as Falcon Crest, Superboy, and Melrose Place. Jens has acted in over 100 different productions throughout her very long career. Jens has also done quite a lot of voice acting for a few films and documentaries throughout her career, most recently as the female guardian in the 2011 DC movie, The Green Lantern. She has also lent her voice to Star Trek Online, reprising her role as the head changeling founder. However, this is not the first time we would see Jens in the Star Trek universe. In fact, her Star Trek debut would come in the form of the 6th-season TNG episode, The Chase, where she played the ancient humanoid who was part of a civilization that seeded our galaxy with life. Jens would be a reoccurring character on DS9 for a total of 15 episodes. This would be her 4th appearance on Deep Space Nine out of 15 episodes. Jens has worked on such projects as Angel Baby, Mary Hartman, Falcon Crest, Melrose Place, and The Green Lantern. IMDb and personal synopsis. The IMDb synopsis says, after chasing a fugitive into a cave, Kira gets stuck and is slowly encapsulated by a growing crystal stone while Odo tries to figure out how to free her. Now, even though this is pretty straight to the point, this only describes the A plot of this episode. This is an episode of Star Trek where both the A and B plot are just as strong as each other. However, my personal synopsis is the one where love does indeed rock while a young Ferengi follows his dreams. Story breakdown and galactic map position. So, like most normal episodes of Star Trek, the story itself is broken down into 5 acts with a beginning teaser and 2 story plots, A and B. So, with that said, let's take a look at the map and see where we are. Plot A, Odo and Kira are in a runabout coming back from a security conference on Prophet's Landing. This is the Bajoran colony that is closest to the wormhole. And then they receive a distress call, and then they follow an attacking Maquis ship into an unnamed moon just outside the Badlands, as pictured here. Now, there is no official name for this moon that they land on, but they do mention the ionic interference that's present in the atmosphere, and this is a common theme that we see in all the Deep Space Nine episodes that take place in the Badlands. And Plot B takes place on Deep Space Nine with Sisko and the rest of the crew. The main supporting characters on DS9 in this episode are Rom and Nog. Most of the B story plot is focused around Sisko and Nog respectively, and unlike most Star Trek episodes where we get a captain's log, we start this episode off with Kira and a first officer's log. Let's take a listen, shall we? First officer's log.
First Officer's Log, Stardate 48521.5. Odo and I are returning to Deep Space Nine after reviewing security procedures at Prophet's Landing, the Bajoran colony closest to the Cardassian border.
The teaser. Okay, so we open up with a shot of the runabout, the USS Mekong to be exact, as the audio for our only log entry plays in this episode in the background. It's Major Kira, along with Odo, as Kira explains they are returning to Deep Space Nine following a security conference on Prophet's Landing. Kira then explains to Odo that the orbital sensor platforms should give the Cardassians a run for their money if they should decide to break the new treaty. As she goes on to explain, we see that Odo seems only partly interested in what Kira is saying to him. It's like something is heavily on Odo's mind. Odo replies to Kira's banter with the whimsical and, hopefully, Kira then asks Odo how his meeting with Security Chief Benmar went. Odo, still seemingly only half interested in the conversation, replies, fine. Kira then asks Odo if the Security Chief was impressed by Odo's techniques. She's trying to lighten up the mood a bit. Odo replies with another and a scoff, and this puts Kira off a bit. Kira sees that Odo is still in a sour mood after her little chat about the conference. She turns to Odo and asks him if anything is wrong, now in a more serious tone. Odo replies with, "What makes you say that?" Kira then goes on the defensive and explains that Odo hasn't even said 5 words since they've left Prophet's Landing. Odo rolls his eyes at Kira's words and replies with yet another, Kira, now getting concerned, asks Odo if she had done something wrong to offend him, and if so, he should tell her what she did. Odo thinks for a second and replies, "It's not important," and tries to push Kira away from the conversation. He continues on to say, "Certainly nothing to make an issue about." Kira then goes on the full defensive and replies, "Well, glad to hear it." You can see that Kira is starting to get visibly upset over the whole situation. But Odo does finally come out and answer Kira's earlier question. We can definitely see that it's been eating at him this whole conversation. Odo then explains to Kira that when they were on Prophet's Landing, the colony's governor, Avesta, had offered them both a dinner invitation, but she turned it down without consulting him first. Kira, now more confused than anything, asks Odo if he seriously wanted to go to the dinner. Odo replies, "No, not particularly." Kira, now even more confused, asks Odo, "Well, what's the problem then?" Odo then finally comes out with it and says the problem is that she had never asked him or even considered asking him if he wanted to attend the dinner. Kira is now really confused as hell and tells Odo that he doesn't even eat, and he hates socializing with people that he doesn't even know. Odo retorts, "Well, that's besides the point. He just wanted to be consulted next time." Kira, now more irritated than confused, just agrees with Odo and tells him he's right. She continues to say that the next time they get invited out to dinner, she will definitely make sure that he is the one to say no. Odo, now calm, says he would appreciate that. Kira then smiles. She's no longer irritated, but she becomes overly amused by the situation. Kira really doesn't know how to process this whole strange conversation with Odo. This little scene gets interrupted as Kira receives a distress call. Kira goes on to say it's a Lesepian cargo ship and it's being attacked by a Maquis interceptor. Odo looks down at the runabout's panels and says that the long-range sensors confirm that it's a modified Peregrine-class attack vessel. He adds that it's most likely lightly armed and has a one-man crew, and gives the Maquis ship's bearing. Kira confirms this and says that the Maquis often use those type of vessels. Kira then says the Lesepian ship didn't sustain much damage, and that she's going after the Maquis ship. Odo, who is now in full agreement, says right. And then we get a nice shot of the runabout heading off. It fires up its warp engines, takes off, and then begins the hot pursuit of the Maquis interceptor. The Ensign's summary. This scene is around the time when the writer started making Odo fall in love with Kira, except we know that Odo's feelings at this point are genuine, and Kira is not really thinking in that type of manner about him just yet. And then we fade into Act 1. We open up the first act with another shot of the runabout in pursuit of the Maquis vessel, as well as the episode title card. Kira mentions that the Maquis ship engines have been modified and it's moving really fast. She adds they better catch them soon because they are entering the Badlands. Odo is tracking the ship on sensors, but he loses the signal because of the interference in the Badlands. He then adds the ship is heading for a moon, but they can't get a lock because of the moon's atmosphere. Kira then decides to pursue the rebel, and then we get a shot of the runabout as it begins to land on the moon. Meanwhile, back on Deep Space Nine, we open up with Sisko going over some reports. Sisko then gets a message over the comm from Chief O'Brien, and outside in the command center, we see that Nog is standing next to him. The chief explains to the commander that Nog wants to see him, and you can really see this catches Sisko by surprise. Nog looks over to O'Brien, and then tells the chief to relay that the message is urgent. O'Brien then looks back at Nog with a kind of look that says he's not buying what Nog is selling, and then relays Nog's message to Commander Sisko. Sisko replies, "Send him in." Nog, now gloating in triumph, looks at the chief and tells O'Brien, "I told you he'd see me." O'Brien, now more confused than anything, watches as the young Ferengi heads into Sisko's office. Nog enters Sisko's office, and we see him holding a bag of some sort. Nog starts off by telling the commander how grateful he is that he allowed him to meet him as they shake hands. After a small introduction, Sisko asks Nog, "What is this all about?" Nog replies that he wanted to give the commander this, and then places the bag on the table. He then asks Sisko to open the bag and to take a look inside, and the commander complies. He sees the bag is full of gold-pressed latinum. He then smiles and then politely asks Nog, "What is this?"
Platinum.
What is this?
Nog replies, "It's latinum." Sisko retorts, "I can see that it's latinum, but why are you giving it to me?" Nog then explains that yesterday he completed the Ferengi attainment ceremony, effectively making him an adult in Ferengi society. Sisko gives Nog a swift congratulations, but then replies that still doesn't explain why Nog is giving him the latinum. Nog explains that by Ferengi bylaws, it is a tradition for him to buy an apprenticeship once he reaches adult status. He finishes by saying that he has chosen Sisko as his mentor. Sisko looks completely taken back by Nog's offer and explanation, and then he asks Nog, "You want to be my apprentice?" Nog gleefully answers yes to the commander, and then he adds, "I want to be the first Ferengi in Starfleet," and then adds, "Now, who do I see about getting a uniform?" Sisko then replies that if Nog wants to join Starfleet, he would have to go through the academy first. Not yet ready to back down from this, Nog replies, "Okay, where do I sign up?" Sisko then explains that it's not that simple, and that he needs a letter from a command-level officer to even take the entrance exam into the academy, because he's a non-Federation citizen. Nog pushes the latinum closer towards Sisko and replies, "A command-level officer? Like you?" Sisko replies, "Well, yes, like me, Nog." Nog retorts, "Then you will write this letter for me." Sisko pushes the latinum back towards Nog and replies, "He will think about it." Nog then thanks the commander and then adds he knows that Sisko will make the right decision, and then pushes the latinum back towards the commander. He turns to leave, but then remembers to give Sisko a handshake before he departs. Sisko then adds, "Aren't you forgetting something?" hinting towards the latinum. Nog tells the commander to keep it as a token of his appreciation. With that, Nog departs Sisko's office and then heads off. After Nog is gone, Sisko thinks about the whole proposal and wonders to himself what Nog is scheming. And then we head back to the moon in the Badlands, where Odo and Kira are chasing the Maquis fugitive. Inside a cavern in the moon, we see Odo and Kira searching for the fugitive. Odo mentions that the tricorders are useless because of the moon's atmosphere. The cavern begins to shake, and Kira tells Odo that was the third quake since they have arrived, and that the moon itself must be seismically unstable. They continue on, both in agreement that they don't want to be here any longer than they have to. Kira then tells Odo that they should split up, and that if they haven't found the fugitive within 20 minutes, they should leave without him. Odo agrees by saying that the fugitive should just give up, because a Federation prison beats this place. Both Kira and Odo then head their opposite ways. And then we get a scene with Odo searching for the fugitive, but then he gets a call from Kira saying that she's trapped and needs his help. Odo acknowledges her call, and then replies for her to stay still. Odo then runs off to find the Major. After a small search, Odo finally finds Kira in a corridor, sitting down on a rock. Odo then asks Kira what's wrong, and then he goes down to find out that her foot is stuck in some sort of crystal. Kira explains that she stepped in a fissure and had gotten her foot stuck in it somehow. As Odo goes down to look at the crystal surrounding Kira's foot, he notices that it starts to grow bigger, right in front of his eyes. Kira then asks Odo, "What is it?" Odo replies, he doesn't know, but it's spreading. The Ensign Summary. Okay, so far, we have a nice story set up in Act 1. This episode has 2 strong plots, as opposed to 1 really strong plot and a minor one. In my personal opinion, I think that the B story with Nog and Starfleet is just a little stronger than the A story with Odo and Kira in this episode. While this may be the humble beginnings of an Odo-Kira relationship in DS9, Nog starting his journey into being the first Ferengi in Starfleet is a much more noble and noteworthy story. Even at this point in the story, this is a pretty strong episode so far, all the way around. And then we fade into Act 2. So, we opened up Act 2 on the moon with Odo and Kira, as Kira is still held fast by the crystal around her foot. Odo asks Kira if she can pull her foot free. Kira replies no, that she can barely even feel her foot. Odo then goes down to the ground to pick up a rock, and then he heads over to Kira and tries to use the rock to shatter the crystal off her foot, but he is ultimately unsuccessful in his attempts. Kira then laughs at the situation, saying they both are being outsmarted by a rock. Odo then replies that he's still determined not to give up. Kira agrees, and then asks Odo to hand her her phaser. He complies, but then he asks her if what she's about to do is a good idea or not. Kira turns the phaser settings down so she doesn't end up blowing her foot off in the attempt to free herself. Kira then fires the phaser at the crystal around her foot, but instead of cutting through the crystal grows now even more, almost reaching her knee. Odo goes down to investigate, and then deducts that the crystal fed off the phaser's energy and then made it grow even further. Odo then tries to contact the Mekong to beam them both out of the cavern, but is unsuccessful because of the atmospheric interference. He adds that he will have to go back to the shuttle and try to transport her from there. Odo starts to leave to head to the shuttle, but then stops and turns around and looks at Kira. He feels bad about leaving her there alone. Kira picks up the visual clue and then asks Odo if he's afraid of leaving her there alone. Odo replies yes. Kira then tells Odo that she will be fine. She then smiles and then promises that she won't go anywhere, to which Odo gives her a nod and then turns to leave to go to the runabout. Meanwhile, back on Deep Space Nine, we open up with a nice father-son moment as Rom is working with Nog to fix a broken replicator. Rom asks Nog to hand him the phase matrix calibrator. I'll look into this later. Quark makes an entrance and asks if the replicator is done, and what is taking so long. Nog explains that the whole power source was blown out. Rom then adds that he told Quark that if Quark didn't shut down the replicators at least once a week for maintenance, overloads happen. Quark, like usual, gives no fucks and isn't looking for any excuse or any explanations. He just wants it done because he's losing money. Nog interjects, telling Quark that Rom warned him, but then Rom takes the blame instead, saying that he should have explained it better to Quark. Quark then replies with a classic Quark line, "Of course it's always your fault. It's in your contract." And I don't doubt for a second that this is actually written into a Ferengi work contract. Quark then adds that he wants this mess cleaned up before lunch, or the losses will come out of Rom's pay. With that, Quark leaves. Rom, now looking defeated, tells Nog that he's got to go get a replacement power coupling and then heads off, and Nog just sits there lost in thought about the whole situation. He's definitely feeling upset for his father and about the way that his uncle treats him. And then we head into Quark's bar as Jake Sisko enters to come and see Nog, who is working. He takes a seat at the bar and begins to talk to Nog. He opens up to Nog and tells him that his joke earlier was great. Nog, kind of surprised at the comment, asks, "What joke?" Jake replies, "About wanting to join Starfleet?" Nog firmly replies that he wasn't joking. Jake replies, "Come on, Nog, that wasn't a joke." Nog then asks Jake if he told his father that it was a joke. Jake replies, "Yes." Nog, now infuriated, demands that Jake go back to his father and tell him that it's not a joke. Jake then tells Nog to calm down, and then adds that Nog has never once told him that he wanted to join Starfleet before. Nog says he has his reasons. Jake sort of agrees, but then adds that if this is some sort of scheme, his father's a pretty smart dude and he'll figure it out. Nog then replies that his reasons are personal, and there is nothing to figure out. He adds that he's joining Starfleet, and that's that. And just like all the other people that Nog has mentioned this to, Jake is also taken back and confused a bit. He then gets up and walks out, and then Nog, seemingly even more determined, goes back to fixing the replicator. And then we head back to the moon, where we open up with a picture of the runabout on the surface. We head inside the Mekong with Odo, who is at the control panels. He's trying to teleport Kira out of the cave, but it's not working. He asks the computer what the problem is, and the computer then responds that due to the level of ionic interference in the atmosphere, teleportation is not possible. On a side note, I broke down ionics in part 2 of my emissary review, so if you're interested, definitely take a look. Odo then asks the computer if he can compensate with pattern enhancers, but the computer still replies negative. Odo then asks the computer to send a Priority 1 distress call to Deep Space Nine. The computer is unable to comply at first, but then Odo asks it to launch a probe to send out a signal. The computer complies and the probe launches. Odo then asks the computer how long it will take for a message to reach Deep Space Nine. The computer answers 2 days. Odo then bows his head because 2 days is most likely not enough time to receive the help they need. Odo then sits back and collects his thoughts on what to do next. Odo heads back to the cavern to check on Kira. As soon as he approaches her location, he hears phaser fire in the distance. He makes it to her and tells her that he heard phaser fire. She confirms and tells Odo that the fugitive had stepped out of an opening, and they exchanged phaser blasts. She tells Odo that the fugitive ran off after their small exchange. Odo then goes behind the Major to examine the phaser markings on the cavern wall, and adds that he didn't miss by much, unto which Kira replies, "My lucky day." The Ensign's summary. Now, Act 2 is great for a couple things here. First, the father and son moment with Rom and Nog. Both Max and Aron kill it here with this performance. You can see that Nog is really coming to terms with himself, his position on the station, and advocating to change that, which makes his story arc super powerful. Also, not a lot of people give credit to Rom as a father, but as we will see in this episode and throughout the rest of the series, Rom was an amazing father to Nog. Kudos. And number 2, it is kind of strange that Nog never mentions his desire to join Starfleet to Jake at any time in their friendship. I personally think that as a best friend, he would have mentioned this to Jake at some point. This does indeed seem strange to me too. Oh well, this is also a huge credit to the writers of Deep Space Nine as well. This is a living testament to the chances the writers took to make this show great. Like, fuck it, let's throw a Ferengi in Starfleet and see what happens. And then we fade into Act 3. We opened up Act 3 with a little scene between Sisko and Bashir talking about Ensign Felix Pran. Pran wants to get reassigned due to his pregnancy. Bashir mentions that Ensign is budding and is pregnant with twins. Sisko is absolutely delighted by the news, and even offers to give Felix Pran a gift. He then grants the request. Unfortunately, Bashir never mentions what species Pran is, but it is inferred that he is a plant-based species. I will cover Felix Pran in a little more detail later on in the video, but after their small talk, Bashir eventually leaves and Sisko walks past Quark's bar, and Nog cuts him off and asks the commander if he's considered writing the letter for him. Sisko replies, "Not exactly," and then breaks it all down to Nog. Sisko goes on to say that when he thinks of Starfleet material, Nog doesn't fit the bill. He explains that Nog's reputation on the station hasn't been the greatest. He adds that Nog's school grades are media core at best, and Nog has had quite a few run-ins with Constable Odo. Nog doesn't try and dispute anything the commander says, but instead replies, "I know, but I know I can do better," and then proceeds to beg the commander for a chance. Nog then puts his hand out for the commander to shake, but as you can see, Sisko is clearly quite skeptical of Nog. And then we break to a scene with Jadzia Dax as she enters Sisko's office at his request. Sisko explains to her that he needs Cargo Bay 12 inventoried right away. Jadzia replies, "Didn't we just do Cargo Bay 12 last week?" Sisko replies yes, but he wants it done again, and he's got someone in mind for the job. He wants Nog to do it, because he's asked for a recommendation to Starfleet Academy. Jadzia, stunned as everyone else was, replies, "Nog?" Sisko replies, "Yes, Nog." The commander adds that it is unlikely, but before he writes Nog off, he wants to give him a chance to prove himself. Jadzia mentions to Sisko that there is a lot of valuable equipment in Cargo Bay 12. Sisko replies he knows. Jadzia steps in to say that she can assign someone to help Nog, but Sisko ultimately retorts no. He wants Nog to do it alone, with no help, no interference, and no one looking over his shoulder. Back on the moon, we cut to Odo and Kira. We see that the crystal is now up to Kira's waist. Odo says he wishes he could analyze the crystal to see what it's made from. Kira replies she wished anything worked. Odo starts to think and mentions that this is all pretty convenient, and perhaps that the fugitive led them here on purpose, and then he vows to not stop trying until Kira is free. Kira, now clearly distressed, figures that at the rate the crystal is growing, she maybe has about 12 hours left. The cavern begins to violently shake, and then Odo goes to sit down and try to think a way out of the situation. He then alludes to the criminal reports that he gets on Deep Space Nine, and asks Kira if she reads them too. Kira replies, "Not often." Odo then tells her she should, and then recalls a story about a heist on a world where the inhabitants spin their structures and buildings out of crystal, then tells her that a group of Nausicaan raiders used a high-frequency ultrasonic generator to create vibrations to crack the crystal and pull off the heist. Kira, still in distress, doesn't follow the story right away, but Odo says he can make a similar generator from the covariant oscillator from the runabout. With that, Odo departs once more back to the Mekong to grab the parts he will need to help Kira. He tells Kira to keep her phaser handy in case the fugitive comes back. Still not able to go anywhere and waist deep in crystal, Kira waits until Odo's return. Back on DS9, Jadzia is taking Nog to Cargo Bay 12 to do the inventory that Sisko had requested. She explains to Nog that the previous report was lost due to a computer error, and that Sisko needs the inventory done again. Nog replies, "The whole cargo bay?" Jadzia says, "Yes," but then goes into explaining that Starfleet most of the time is just hard work. She adds that Sisko wants the report on his desk tomorrow morning. Nog replies that he will have it done and on his desk before Sisko ends his shift tonight, and then he tells Jadzia to leave him to his work. And with that, Jadzia hands Nog the pad and leaves Nog to his job. Nog, now with pad in hand, begins the inventory count. And then we cut back to the moon with Odo and Kira. Odo has returned from the Mekong and has fabricated the sonic device in order to free Kira. Kira then asks Odo how long it will take for the generator to find the right frequency. Odo replies it could take a very long time, many hours. Kira then asks if he knows how to speed things up, and we can see that the crystal has now moved past her waist, even further up her body. Odo tells her not to worry, and that he has every intention of getting them both back to the station. Odo then replies, Chief O'Brien is counting on it. Kira asks what Chief O'Brien has to do with it. He replies that they have an appointment. Kira responds with, what kind of appointment? She then asks Odo to keep talking to pass the time. Odo replies that he and the Chief go kayaking together in the holosuite. Kira then asks Odo if he's done it before. Odo replies twice he has joined O'Brien in the holosuite kayak program, and he enjoys it. Kira then replies, it's hard for her to imagine to see them both in a boat together. Odo replies he goes along, but O'Brien does all the singing. Kira, now amused a little, replies, he sings? Odo replies yes, and then explains the Chief sings to establish a proper rowing rhythm, and that he's fond of a particular song called Louie Louie. Odo then explains that besides his family and his work, shooting the rapids is O'Brien's favorite thing to do. And then Odo mentions that O'Brien has had the same holodeck program since he was serving in the Enterprise D under Captain Picard. Kira asks how long does the trip take? Odo replies that it depends on how many times they capsize the boat along the way. Odo goes on to say that it's extremely dangerous and the Chief has dislocated his shoulder quite a few times trying to make it through. Kira then asks him why does he keep doing it? Odo replies because the Chief loves it, and humanoids have a hard time giving up the things that they love. Kira then replies that she's glad that Odo's here. Odo then replies he's glad he's here as well. And then this all gets cut off as the cavern begins to shake again. A small earthquake shakes through the cavern as the rocks start falling down all around them. They both now know that time is running out. The Ensign's Summary. Act 3 raises the stakes a little. Nog begins his long adventure into Starfleet, while Odo and Kira remain trapped in the cavern on the moon. Odo built the generator to help Kira, but this little scene gives us a little backstory into Chief O'Brien as well. We now know that the Chief loves kayaking while singing Louie Louie, and that Odo joins him from time to time. Also, we get some more information about O'Brien's bum shoulder, what she dislocates a lot. Odo also mentions that humanoids have a tough problem giving up things that they love, but in this case, this best describes Odo himself coming to terms with his own humanity. My only issue here is the off-screen O'Brien and Odo relationship. They are really good friends, but we never get to see them hang out. In addition to kayaking, Odo also mentions the Chief loans him mystery crime novels for him to read. I would have loved a solo Odo and O'Brien episode, because both of them have very curmudgeous personalities. And then we fade into Act 4. We open up Act 4 with Odo and Kira in the cavern during the quake. Odo has turned himself into a protective shield to cover Kira and the equipment from the collapsing rocks all around them. The shaking stops, and Odo begins to reform. Once reformed, he asks the Major if she's alright. Kira responds she's fine, but what about the generator? Odo replies it's fine, but it still hasn't found the right frequency to shatter the crystal. Kira begs for the machine to hurry up, because a couple more quakes like that and they're done for. Odo assures her that they have been in far worse situations and made it through. Kira then oddly asks him to name 3 of those situations. Odo is kind of thrown off by her remark, not by the fact that he couldn't name 3 situations, but by her comment in general. Odo suggests that this is not the response he was expecting to hear. Odo then explains that in the crime novels that O'Brien gives him, when a hero says they've been through tougher situations, that his friends tend to agree. Kira replies that she's never read any of those novels. Odo then looks for some words to cheer her up, but Kira cuts him off by saying that she'd rather face the situation head on. Odo then replies he feels the same way. Kira says, I know you do, and that's why they get along so well. Odo then promises Kira that he will get her out of here. Back on the station, Sisko and Jadzia are meeting over lunch. They are discussing Nog's recent work on the cargo bay inventory. Sisko then looks at the report and admits that this is very impressive work. Jadzia replies, incredible work, and Nog completed the whole count within 5 hours. Sisko then asks Jadzia if she thinks that Nog had any help. Jadzia replies no. The sensors indicated that he was alone the whole time. Sisko then says, I guess Nog did learn something working in his uncle's storeroom. Sisko then asks her if all the equipment was where it needs to be, and if anything was taken. Jadzia then replies to the commander, if you're asking if Nog stole anything, the answer is no. In fact, he found some things that were missing from the original logs. Sisko then replies, well, now we know he's a hard worker, but the question remains, why does he want to join Starfleet? Jadzia replies, she has no idea. And then we head back to the moon's cavern with Odo and Kira. Odo is frustrated because the machine is not finding the right frequency. He goes on to say that he had went through the entire spectrum and the machine still won't find the right frequency. He adds that it's like the crystal itself is mutating to keep them from finding the right frequency. Kira calls out to Odo, and we see the crystal has grown all the way up to her neck now. Odo then rushes over to Kira to comfort her, and tells her that he wishes there was something more that he could do. Kira just asks Odo to keep talking to her, and then Kira asks Odo to tell her a story. Odo starts to think for a bit, and then Kira cuts him off, and then asks Odo how he got his name. Odo complies and begins to recall the story for her. Odo explains that when Dr. Mora first brought him to the laboratory for study, it was under Cardassian rule, and all the specimens had to be clearly labeled for the Cardassian supervisor. This was to ensure that everybody knew what the scientists were working on. And since no one knew what Odo was at that point, Dr. Mora labeled Odo as unknown sample. And then the Cardassians translated Dr. Mora's label into the Cardassian language as Odo Ital. Kira then asks Odo that his name was unknown sample. Odo says no. Odo Ital in Cardassian literally means the word nothing. He goes on to say that even after they found out that he was sentient, the Bajoran scientists still called him Odo Ital as a joke, and turned it into a first and last name, so he became Odo Ital, which eventually just got shortened to Odo. Then they are cut off as another small quake hits the cavern, but Odo continues on with the story, adding that first, whenever he spoke his name, he literally thought himself as nothing. He had no family and no friends, so the name perfectly suited him. But then he met her and the others on the station, and now when they call his name, he doesn't think of nothing anymore. He now thinks of himself. He then apologizes to Kira because his story wasn't amusing enough for her. Kira, now in serious distress, lays her head on Odo's hand and tells him, no, I like that story very much. Kira then asks Odo that the ultrasonic generator isn't going to work, is it? To which Odo confirms, no, it's not going to work. Kira then asks Odo if he's got any other ideas. Odo replies no, and that it doesn't make sense. The generator should have worked, and something isn't right here. Kira then adds that they have to move past that now, and that Odo should leave to save himself. She adds that the Maquis fugitive is probably dead from a cave-in, and that this cavern can collapse on him at any moment. Odo, not ready to hear this yet, tries to put together what she is really saying. Kira then tries to pull rank on Odo and orders him to head to the runabout and get off the moon as soon as possible. Odo, not knowing how to respond, is now really starting to feel torn apart by the whole situation. The Ensign Summary. So, like most Act 4s, things traditionally start to heat up here. Nog proves to both Sisko and Dax that he is indeed a hard worker, but they are still on the fence about trusting Nog completely. As Odo and Kira are stuck in the caverns, we see that Odo is unsuccessful in his attempt to free Kira from the crystal. We also see him grow a little more suspicious that the generator didn't work out in the situation. And then we get the story behind Odo's name, which is all pretty good stuff. We see Odo's frustration is starting to break him, not only because he can't figure out what's going on, but also because of his feelings for Kira and abandoning her. And then we fade into Act 5. So, we open up Act 5 on the moon's cavern with Odo and Kira. Kira is telling Odo that she ordered him to go and to save himself, but Odo refuses the order straight out. He then tells Kira that he resigns his commission. Kira pleads with Odo, saying that if he stays here, he's going to die. Odo lashes back at her now, visibly upset, and tells her that she doesn't know that for certain, and even if it were true that he was going to die, he still wouldn't abandon her. The cavern begins to shake again. Kira continues to plead with Odo for him to go. Odo, now looking defeated, says no, that he can't go. He won't leave her. Kira then asks why. Odo screams out, because. Odo calms down a bit, and then finally comes out with it. He says because he's in love with her. Odo now starts to really feel it, and collapses to the ground in emotional defeat, and then finally replies to Kira, so now you know. Kira then surprisingly replies, she's in love with Odo as well. Odo then looks back up at her in a bit of disbelief at Kira's reciprocation. He doesn't know what to say. Meanwhile, back on Deep Space Nine, Nog enters Sisko's office per Sisko's request to talk to him. But before the scene coming up, which is a rather powerful scene in the series as a whole, I just have to let it play out. This scene is one of two very powerful and emotional scenes by Nog for me in DS9. I'll get to the other one in a second, but here you go. Nog and Aron at their best, along with an amazing performance by Avery on Sisko's part as well.
You want to deceive me, Commander?
Nog, I've given your request a lot of thought.
I appreciate that, Commander.
But I'm afraid I'm going to have to turn you down.
Turn me down? Why? Did I do something wrong?
It's not anything you did, Nog. You're just not Academy material. Here. This belongs to you.
Commander, can't we talk about this?
There's nothing to talk about. We both know you'd never make it through the Academy. You couldn't handle the workload or the discipline. You wouldn't last 2 weeks.
That's not true! I'm a hard worker! I proved that to you!
It doesn't matter. And I'm not going to put my reputation on the line just to satisfy some whim of yours.
It's not just a whim. I'm serious about joining Starfleet.
I don't have time for this, Nog. Now, whatever little scheme you had, you can forget it. I'm not giving you that letter.
It's not a joke or a scheme. I want to join Starfleet. I want it more than anything I've ever wanted in my life.
You're a Ferengi. Why would you want to be in Starfleet? Where's the profit in it?
I don't care about profit.
Then what do you care about? Come on, Nog, tell me. Why is it so damned important that you get into Starfleet? Why are you doing this?
Because I don't want to end up like my father!
Your father?
That's right, my father. He's been chasing profit his whole life. And what has it gotten him? Nothing. And you know why? Because he doesn't have the lobes. And neither do I.
And a Ferengi without profit.
Is no Ferengi at all.
The 18th rule of acquisition.
My father is a mechanical genius. He could have been chief engineer of a starship if he'd had the opportunity. But he went into business like a good Ferengi. The only thing is, he's not a good Ferengi. Not when it comes to acquiring profit. So now, all he has to live for is the slim chance that someday, somehow, he might be able to take over my uncle's bar. Well, I'm not going to make the same mistake. I want to do something with my life, something worthwhile.
Like joining Starfleet?
I may not have an instinct for business, but I have my father's hands and my uncle's tenacity. I know I've got something to offer. I just need the chance to prove it.
All right. I'll see that you get that chance.
You're gonna recommend me to Starfleet Academy?
I'll send the letter the first thing tomorrow morning.
Commander, I don't know how to thank you.
Whoa. Don't thank me yet. You still have a lot of work ahead of you.
Don't worry. You're never going to regret this.
Okay, after this amazing scene, we head back to the moon's cavern with Odo and Kira. Odo's investigating the wall behind Kira where the fugitive's phaser blast struck. Kira then says to Odo that he hasn't spoken to her in over an hour. Odo replies that he's just been going through a few things in his mind about the situation. Kira then tells Odo that she's sorry it took so long for her to tell him about how she felt about him. Odo starts to come to a realization after Kira's last remark, and then he finally says he thinks he knows what's going on here. He adds that this situation just hasn't been right since the beginning, and that there have been far too many coincidences and inconsistencies. Kira, now up to her neck in crystal, asks Odo, does he think this is some sort of conspiracy? Odo goes on to question her about the Maquis that attacked her earlier, and then he goes to a spot and then he asks her if this is where the fugitive was standing, and he follows up by asking, how tall was he? Kira tries to tell him maybe a little shorter, and why is he asking her all these questions? Odo then tells her it matters, because from where he's standing, she's completely blocking the phaser blast markings behind her. Kira tries to reply. Maybe he was standing somewhere else, to which Odo replies, maybe, or she's lying to him. Which makes it 2 times she's lied to him today. Odo then approaches her and tells her that she lied to him about being shot at by the Maquis fugitive, and then she lied to him again when she said that she loved him. He goes on to say he observes human nature, and in the last 3 years that she's known him, she hasn't once given an indication that she loves him at all. Likes him, yes, but love? No. Kira replies that she only told him that because that's what she thought he wanted to hear. Odo backs up and picks up a phaser and tells her she just lied to him again. Kira tries to tell him that she can explain, but Odo cuts her off and then says, good, she can start by telling him who she is and what she's done with Major Kira. Kira then raises her head and smiles at Odo, indicating that she's in no pain at all, and then she starts to transform. We find out that it's not Major Kira at all. In fact, it hasn't been Kira for quite some time. It's actually the head female changeling founder. Odo now knows the truth, and it looks like he almost doesn't know what to think about the whole situation. The female changeling then says, well done, Odo, and then congratulates him on his investigative prowess. Odo then asks her where Major Kira is. The changeling replies, close by. Odo then adds that she was the fugitive they were chasing, wasn't she? She confirms this also. And then Odo asks her why has she done all this? Why take the place of Major Kira? Onto what she replies that she wanted to understand why Odo wanted to live with the Solids and not his own people. She adds that she suspected Major Kira was a part of the reason, and now she's certain of it. Odo, now infuriated, asks her if that was the plan all along, to get rid of Major Kira, and that it would in turn get rid of his link to the Solids. She then cuts him off and says, yes, that you would return home with us. Odo, after hearing this plan, assures her that will never happen. Odo then demands for her to tell him where Major Kira is. The changeling then replies, or what, are you going to shoot me? And that no changeling has ever harmed another changeling. To which Odo replies with phaser in hand, there's always a first time. Then the changeling reveals Kira's location and tells Odo to go save her if it suits him. But it won't matter, because she could never love him. Because how could she? He's a changeling. Odo is kind of thrown back by this whole situation right now. With that, the female changeling teleports out and leaves him. Odo then finds Kira in a pod and wakes her up to leave as a cavern starts to shake around them. And they both make a fast exit and head back to the Mekong to get the hell out of Dodge. And then we head back into Deep Space Nine with a nice stock footage shot of the station spinning. Odo and Kira arrive out of an airlock. They are in the middle of some small talk. Kira then asks Odo if the female changeling wanted to test his allegiance to the Solids, why did they pick her? Odo tells her it could have been any number of reasons, trying to deflect the question. Kira then asks Odo how he figured it all out. Odo replies that she said something that Kira would never say, a slip of the tongue. Kira then asks him, well, what did she say? Odo then replies, it was nothing important really. And with that, they head off. And then we head over to Quark's with Rom, Nog, and Quark, and they are discussing Nog's decision to join Starfleet. Quark, infuriated, explains that no nephew of his will disgrace his family name by joining Starfleet, and in fact, he forbids it. Rom has had enough of this and stands up to Quark by saying, when it comes to the bar, you may be in charge, but when it comes to his son, he's in charge. Quark then tells Rom fine, and that he should tell Nog that he can't join Starfleet. Rom then looks at Nog and says, good luck, and that he would love to have a son in Starfleet. Nog is all smiles at Rom's words. Quark, not knowing what to say, tells them both that they are insane. Nog then goes over to his dad and holds his hand, absolutely ecstatic about Rom's decision to let him go. Nog replies, like father, like son. And with that, we get a nice shot of the station, and then we fade out. The end. The Ensign's summary. So, now that the story has come to its resolution, we discover that Kira was the female changeling all along, and she was testing Odo. Her intention was to break him right off the bat with a shot to the heart, and she was close to succeeding. We get to see the full range of Odo's love for Kira here, and he still decides to keep it a secret from her at the very end. Whether it was a good or bad decision on Odo's part to not tell Kira how he feels up to this point is still up for debate, but it does give his character another arc to work with and fleshes him out emotionally, which is something we see very little from the mostly cold and closed off Constable. All this together was a solid win-win for Odo's character, but not so much for Kira because it wasn't technically her. Also, this gives us a good look into the Dominion and the tactics that they employ. The Dominion stays relatively silent up until this season. This whole sequence just gives us a clear marker on how far they will go to achieve their needs, and what is to come. The very cool thing about this whole segment is that when you rewatch this episode, Nana Visitor doesn't act like her normal Major Kira during the crystal scenes. There are small subtle differences that seem oblivious at first, but when you rewatch it, you begin to pick up the small trail of breadcrumbs that Odo did in solving this little mystery. Often in life, you just have to go with that gut feeling, even when all the clues seem to tell you otherwise. This segment is a good example of that in action. Kudos to the writers for this little mystery. I do love a good mystery. And on a side note, if you like crime mystery, definitely give Robert Hewitt Wolf's most current project, Elementary, a watch. The show has just ended its run at 7 seasons, making it a perfect binge at the moment. Wolf came into the show in its 2nd season, and you get to see more of his brilliant writing in action in this modern-day Sherlock Holmes epic. Not to say that actors of the caliber of Johnny Lee Miller and Lucy Liu wouldn't help influence your decision also. And finally, onto a scene that has to be one of the strongest emotional high points in Deep Space Nine. Hell, it's probably one of the strongest emotional scenes in Star Trek as a whole. Nog's will and determination, and his fight to join Starfleet, with the help of Commander Sisko and his father Ram as well. This whole arc is not only just a testament to the actors and writers of Deep Space Nine, but to Star Trek and Starfleet. If there were ever a better example of what Starfleet is about, Nog's whole story arc screams Starfleet, because Starfleet is a promise, right? And not to dig too much on Michael Burnham or Captain Pike and their similar speeches about Starfleet and Discovery, but Nog is the perfect example that Starfleet is open to anyone to join as long as they have the will and determination to do so. Starfleet has a place for you, no matter who or what you are, or regardless of where you came from. And that if you work hard, you can succeed at bettering not just your own life, but also the lives of those around you as well. Nog makes that decision, and it doesn't fail him. It makes him feel that he's worth something, and that he is doing something positive with his life, and he's not going to end up like his father. All in all, an amazing Starfleet story by the most unlikely characters to ever consider joining. Again, kudos to the writers and actors willing to take chances to make this show amazing, and amazing it is. And of course, another shout out to Ram for an amazing Star Trek father moment. His support of Nog and his endeavor is paramount and should be duly noted. Kudos to Max and Aaron for this wonderful father and son team on screen. Now, before we head out into the other segments in this video, I wanted to play yet another emotional Nog moment that I had mentioned earlier. This is my second favorite Nog and Jake moment in Deep Space Nine. This scene, along with the Nog Sisko Starfleet scene, hits me right in the feels. So, from the Season 1 episode, The Nagus. Here's the scene with Aaron and Sirach that I adore very much.
What's that word? System. That was pretty good. Want to try some more? The largest planet is Bayshore. It has 3 moons.
You got it! Keep going, keep going.
Okay. The 3rd moon, it has...
An absolutely phenomenal scene. Now, with all that said and done and the main story out of the way, let's jump into Memory Alpha Facts and Trivia. Okay, now it's time for the Memory Alpha Facts and Trivia from this episode. And thank God, it's not nearly as long as my Emissary or Farpoint review. Love these normal length episodes. Let's begin, shall we? The Kira Oda storyline in the episode is partly based on the 1964 Ken Kesey novel, Sometimes a Great Notion. In this book, the character's leg gets trapped underneath a large log, causing him to subsequently drown because the water starts rising above his head. Ira Stephen Bear commented on this scene in the actual film adaptation of Sometimes a Great Notion, saying it's a great scene in a not-so-great movie. Robert Hewitt Wolf comments on Nog's storyline in this episode, saying that one day it just struck him. He thought out of Wesley Crusher, Jake Sisko, and Nog, the only one who will really be standing on a bridge 20 years from now saying engage would be Nog. He said it was a nice irony, and it was something cool to do with Nog's character, especially after Jake Sisko said that he didn't want to join Starfleet. Ronald D. Moore was also impressed with Nog's storyline, saying it was an interesting direction for Nog's character, and somehow Captain Nog sounds cool in general. The final draft of this script is dated November 17, 1994. This episode was a bottle show, or a show that takes place mostly on a ship. Robert Hewitt Wolf comments that they had to pay for the production money used on Past Tense Parts 1 and 2, which was very costly to shoot. So, Heart of Stone was a conscious attempt to do the kind of show they've always done on Deep Space Nine, similar to such episodes as Duet and The Wire, where they take a couple interesting characters and then stick them in a room together. The crystal rock prop that Kira was stuck in most of this episode was wildly unpopular among cast and crew. Nana Visitor commented that in the script, she had pictured she would be turning to stone, but instead, she felt like she looked like an ice cream sundae instead, and her head was the cherry on top. She is definitely not wrong about this. Director Alex Singer said he could do nothing to make that rock prop look good. Nana Visitor, who suffers from claustrophobia, said she had a hard time filming all her scenes encased in the crystal rock prop. Aron Eisenberg enjoyed the filming of this episode and recalls the scene with Avery Brooks quite a lot. He comments that Avery Brooks is a force to be reckoned with, and that his passion drives you to be your best. Eisenberg states that even though they had rehearsed this scene many times, when it came to the actual shooting moment, Avery grabbed Aron's arm, which was not in the original script. But this forced Aron himself to go deeper into his character and feed off of Avery's energy, all in the heat of the moment for an amazing performance. Renee Echeverria comments that Heart of Stone is one of his favorite episodes. He finds it absolutely heartbreaking that Odo finally proclaims his love for Kira, only to find out it's not really her. It's no secret that Aron Eisenberg considers this scene with Avery Brooks in this episode his all-time favorite piece in his acting career, and also this is his favorite Deep Space Nine episode. The title of this episode comes from, and its plot was also inspired by the William Shakespeare play Twelfth Night. The origin of Odo's name is finally revealed in this episode. This is the episode that begins Nog's journey into Starfleet. This episode also reveals for the first time that non-Federation citizens that want to join Starfleet Academy or take the Academy entrance exam need a written letter of recommendation from a command-level Starfleet officer. The head female changeling founder fulfills her promise here that she made to Odo in the earlier third season episode, The Search, Part 2.
I hope that one day you'll return to us, Odo, and take your rightful place within the Dominion.
I don't think that's possible.
Your link to the solids won't last. You will always be an outsider.
Being an outsider isn't so bad. It gives one a unique perspective. It's a pity you've forgotten that.
Then perhaps one day I'll come visit you. The Alpha Quadrant seems racked with chaos. It could use some order.
Imposing your type of order on the Alpha Quadrant may prove more difficult than you imagine.
We are willing to wait until the time is right.
This is the first episode of Deep Space Nine that Odo handles an actual weapon. This episode confirms that Rom is a skilled engineer. This was first hinted at in the second season episode, Necessary Evil. This would also be heavily revisited in the 5th, 6th, and 7th seasons. Rom finally becomes a junior engineer in the 4th season episode, Bar Association.
Ah, Rom, there you are. Why aren't you in your waiter's uniform?
I'll have a large snail juice, please. Straight up.
You know there's no drinking on the job.
That's no way to talk to a customer.
You're not a customer, you're an employee.
Not anymore.
I've wiped my last table and mixed my last black hole. Starting today, I'm one of the station's diagnostic and repair technicians. Junior grade.
Night shift.
Odo's revelation about his love for Kira in this episode is the first time he reveals this information. However, it's hinted at in earlier episodes, but here in the third season episode, Fascination, Luoxana Troy actually guesses it and hits the nail on the head, but Odo never admits it until this episode.
This is one gratitude festival they'll be talking about for a long time.
I know I'll never forget it.
I hope everything works out for you, Odo. With Major Kira.
I don't know what you mean.
Oh, don't worry, your secret's safe with me. After all, I know what it's like to be attracted to someone who doesn't necessarily feel the same way.
Ensign Vilix Pran is mentioned for the first time in this episode in a conversation between Sisko and Bashir. Sisko grants his reassignment due to his pregnancy. However, this is not the only time that he is mentioned, but we never see him or his species on screen. In the later episodes, Pran gets promoted and as well as demoted, all in one season. So let's take a look, shall we, at the Vilix Pran saga. First, we see him talked about here between Kira and Bashir as Lieutenant Pran in the 5th season opening episode, Apocalypse Rising.
Here are the results of the crew physicals.
Ah, anything interesting?
Lieutenant Vilix Pran is budding again.
You're kidding. How many will this make?
Oh, let's see now. He had 2 from the last litter. 4 before that. Could be anywhere from 8 to 18.
You'll need bigger quarters again.
He said the request will be on your desk in the morning.
18? I just hope I can survive 1.
You're doing great.
Oh, I don't feel great.
You're positively glowing.
Oh, really?
I think so. But then I suppose my opinion doesn't really count.
Oh, it counts. But don't forget, this is still your fault.
My fault?
You performed the transfer from Keiko to me.
After you volunteered.
Oh, after you put the idea in my head.
After you flew the runabout into an asteroid field.
After you insisted we check on those anomalous bioscans.
That was Keiko.
Well, that's right, it was, but I'd rather blame you.
Whatever makes you happy. I never argue with my patients or my commanding officer.
On a side note, this is a rather beautiful scene as well, because Nana Visitor was pregnant with Alexander Siddig's child in this episode. It's great watching them play off each other. And then Pran gets mentioned here again later on in the season, when Jake Sisko tells O'Brien that he watches Ensign Pran's hatchlings in the 5th season episode, Business as Usual.
You look terrible. Didn't get much sleep. He woke up every hour or two. Every time I tried to put him back in his crib, he started crying again. He misses his mother.
Oh, when is Professor O'Brien due back from Bayshore?
I don't know. A week, maybe 2. However long it takes to get that blight under control.
That long?
Mm-hmm. On top of that, Annelle had some kind of family emergency, so I'm stuck without a babysitter.
Don't worry about it, Chief. Everything's gonna be fine. I'll take care of Yoshi.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
You sure you're up to it?
Absolutely. I've babysat Ensign Pran's hatchlings a couple of times. Made sure their little wings didn't get all tangled.
Kiryoshi doesn't have little wings.
Even better.
So, within a matter of 17 episodes, Pran gets demoted. Long live Ensign, Lieutenant, whatever Vilix Pran, and all of his hatchlings. In this episode, we also learn that O'Brien's love for kayaking has carried over from his time on Enterprise. However, it is first revealed here in the 3rd season TNG episode, Transfigurations.
What happened to you?
I was kayaking on the holodeck again.
You dislocated your shoulder. Sit down, I'll get the osteotractor frame.
Hi, Mom. We still on for dinner tonight?
7:30 sharp. I'll be right back.
Kayaking again?
Yeah.
This is the first episode where Rom openly defies Quark. This theme would continue on to happen a few times throughout the rest of the series. You can see him defy Quark here in the 3rd season episode, Profit Motive.
Wait a minute. What's that over there?
Trixie and Bubble Juice?
Nog's favorite. This came from my stockroom, didn't it?
Are you accusing my son of being a thief?
No. I'm accusing you of being a thief. These table linens, this chair, that table, everything in here comes from my bar.
Not everything.
When you're done cleaning up, I'm going to conduct a complete inventory and find out exactly what you've stolen from me. Now get to work.
No! I refuse. I worked for you all day, brother, but here I'm the boss. If you want this place cleaned up, do it yourself.
What I want is my own quarters back.
That makes 2 of us. Living with you was bad enough when we were children.
What do I do?
You think.
What do you mean I think?
You stay up late every night plotting and scheming. And when you think, you mumble. And if there's anything I can't stand, it's listening to you mumble.
That does it.
And here, he gets into an actual fight with Quark in the 3rd season episode, Family Business.
Brother, wait.
Out of my way, Rob.
No, I'm not going to let you hurt Mother.
She's no mother of mine.
Why? Because of what she said about Father? Did it ever occur to you that she might be right?
How dare you take her side against Father's?
Oh, don't tell me about Father. I knew him a lot better than you did. You went off as soon as you reached the age of ascension, but I stayed here for 10 more years.
Oh.
You know what I learned in those 10 years? I learned that Father was no financial genius.
Take him back!
It's the truth! He went from one bad deal to the next, one failure after another. He couldn't hold on to Latinum if you sewed it into his pants. Take her back! No!
And this would all finally culminate with the 4th season episode I mentioned earlier, Bar Association. Salome Jens, the actress who played the head female changeling founder, consented to have her credits to be listed at the end of the episode instead of the beginning in order not to spoil the surprise of her appearance. And that does it for all the Memory Alpha facts and trivia for the 3rd season Deep Space Nine episode, Heart of Stone. Now it's time to jump into canon and continuity discussion. Okay, now it's time for the canon and continuity facts for this episode. But there is little here to discuss about this episode. Both Memory Alpha and Beta have little to nothing for canon in this episode. So in place of this segment, I have made a memorial to honor the late, great Aron Eisenberg and Nog in its place. Enjoy!
I want to be the first Ferengi in Starfleet. Now, who do I see about getting a uniform? You have to have faith, Chief, in the great material continuum.
Who are they?
It's not a they. It's the force that binds the universe together. On Ferenginar, we learn about the continuum while we still have our first set of ears. The continuum is real. You see, there are millions upon millions of worlds in the universe. Each one filled with too much of one thing and not enough of another. And the great continuum flows through them all like a mighty river, from have to want and back again. And if we navigate the continuum with skill and grace, our ship will be filled with everything our hearts desire.
Right now, I'd settle for a stabilizer on the captain's desk.
The river will provide.
3, Mark 281.
Computer! Evasive maneuvers! Fire phasers! Launch torpedoes! And escape pods! Don't you get it? I can't go out there.
Why not?
I'm scared, okay? I'm scared. When the war began, I wasn't happy or anything, but I was eager. I wanted to test myself. I wanted to prove I had what it took to be a soldier. And I saw a lot of combat. I saw a lot of people get hurt. I saw a lot of people die. But I didn't think anything was going to happen to me. And then suddenly, Dr. Bashir is telling me he has to cut my leg off. I couldn't believe it. I still can't believe it. If I can get shot, if I can lose my leg, anything can happen to me, Vic. I could die tomorrow. I don't know if I'm ready to face that. If I stay here, at least I know what the future is going to be like.
You stay here, you're gonna die. Not all at once, but little by little. Eventually you become as hollow as I am.
You don't seem hollow to me.
Compared to you, I'm hollow as a snare drum. Look, kid, I don't know what's going to happen to you out there. All I can tell you is that you've got to play the cards life deals you. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But at least you're in the game.
You don't understand because you've never put on one of these uniforms. You don't know anything about sacrifice or honor or duty or any other things that make up a soldier's life. I'm part of something larger than myself. All you care about is you. Let's head for base camp.
Base camp? He means the infirmary. It's right over there.
Come on, let's move it. On the double. Well, what are you waiting for?
2 slips of latinum for the first man who makes it to the infirmary. I mean base camp.
You don't pay your soldiers to do the duty.
You do if they're Ferengi.
No! Computer, freeze program. Reset Jemadar.
I think we're getting better.
No, you're not. This is the 8th run-through, and you haven't been able to hit a single Jemadar. And you shot Moogie.
I saw we weren't gonna rescue her, so I put her out of her misery. Who invited him along? Maybe we should start off with something easier.
Like what?
Like ambushing a couple of Bolians.
You couldn't ambush a Bolian if he was blindfolded and tied to a tree.
That's enough!
He may have been a hero. He may even have been a great man. But in the end, he was a bad captain. One more thing. How do we know that's really Moogie and not a changeling?
I think that uniform is too tight on you, Nog. It's cutting off circulation to your brain.
Sounds like Moogie.
Only one way to find out.
Wait. This should be interesting.
Ow!
Yeah, that's blood, all right.
I knew it was Moogie.
Now let's see if you're a changeling.
That's no way to tell if he's a changeling.
You're right. Give me that knife.
I don't think so. Family, you understand.
Not really. I was cloned.
I don't know how you did it, Nog.
I never lost faith in the great material continuum.
Like you say, the river will provide.
Chief!
The waters just got choppy again.
I want you to have this. Consider it an apology.
Well, you found the blood wine?
Not exactly. Ensign Nog returned from his trip with 16 cases of 2309. A very good year.
An even better vintage than the one my wife sent me.
Well, I'm glad you approve.
And remember, anytime you're shopping for wines or spirits, my cousin Gant is the man to see.
We will keep that in mind.
Your cousin Gant?
Just another sailor on the Great River.
Ah.
By the way, Gant mentioned he's got 10 cases of Saurian brandy. It's the captain's favorite, you know.
Level 5. What does he want for them?
Let me tell you something about humans, nephew. They're a wonderful, friendly people, as long as their bellies are full and their holosuites are working. But take away their creature comforts. Deprive them of food, sleep, sonic showers. Put their lives in jeopardy over an extended period of time, and those same friendly, intelligent, wonderful people will become as nasty and as violent as the most bloodthirsty Klingon. You don't believe me? Look at those faces. Look in their eyes. You know I'm right, don't you? Well, aren't you going to say something? I feel sorry for the Jemadar.
Say it's only a paper moon sailing over a cardboard sea, but it wouldn't be make-believe if you believed in me. Now it's only a canvas sky hanging over a muslin tree, but it wouldn't be make-believe if you believed in me. Without your love, it's a honky-tonk parade. Without your love, it's a melody played in a penny arcade. It's a Barnum and Bailey world, just as phony as it can be. But it wouldn't be make-believe if you believed in me. Without your love, it's a honky-tonk parade. Without your love, it's a melody played in a penny arcade. It's a Barnum and Bailey world, just as phony as it can be. But it wouldn't be make-believe if you believed in me. No, it wouldn't be make-believe if you believed in me. I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places.
Doctor.
Yes?
What is that?
It's a song I had Vic Fontaine record for me.
Vic?
Yes, he's a character in a holosuite program of mine. I thought it might take our minds off our troubles. Is it bothering you?
No. It's kind of nice.
The chestnut trees, the wishing well. I'll be seeing you in every lovely summer's day, in everything that's bright and gay. I'll always think of you. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you.
Thank you.
In all the old familiar places that this heart of mine embraces, in every lovely summer's day, in everything that's bright and gay, I'll always think of you.
Okay, I hope you all enjoyed the memorial. Aron was not only a great person, but over the last several months, he became a friend, and he will be sorely missed. Now, with that out the way, let's jump into technology and technobabble discussion. Okay, now it's time to jump in the technobabble and technological tidbits that are present in this episode. There isn't really so much to this segment, so it shouldn't take too long. Let's dive in. The first thing I noticed was at the very beginning of this episode, where Odo and Kira are in the runabout talking about the Maquis Interceptor. They mention it's a modified Peregrine-class fighter. This is the only mention of this type of craft or its use in Star Trek. The ship has also never been seen on screen. The USS Mekong runabout that Odo and Kira are on was a replacement sent to DS9 for the USS Ganges. The Mekong itself was primarily used during the second and third seasons of Deep Space Nine. The first time we see the Mekong in use is in the second season episode, Whispers. The last time we will see the Mekong in use is when it is abandoned in the Gamma Quadrant, with its systems failing in the third season episode, The Die is Cast. The Mekong is then replaced by the USS Rubicon in the third season episode, Family Business. During the scene with Rom and Nog fixing Quark's broken Cardassian replicator, Rom asks Nog to hand him the Phase Matrix Recalibrator. This is a tool that's used to fix replicators, and this is the only episode this tool is ever mentioned. The ultrasonic generator that Odo forges from the runabout's covariant oscillator to try and free Kira from the crystal is never mentioned again in Trek. As for the covariant oscillator, this item mentioned by Odo for use in making the device is also never mentioned again in Trek. When Odo is in the runabout trying to figure out a way to save Kira from the moon's caverns, he asks the computer if he could employ pattern enhancers to help teleport her out. The computer says no to his request, but this is definitely not the first time we see teleportation pattern enhancers. Pattern enhancers in Star Trek are a piece of mobile technology, usually used on the surface of planets with heavy atmospheric interference. They boost the teleporter's single, the teleporter's strength, and help with its materialization process. They are usually deployed in the area around the subject or the crew that is trying to teleport. Here are some other instances how pattern buffers were used in Star Trek. In the TNG episode, Power Play, Chief Miles O'Brien teleports to the surface to help out Riker, Data, and Deanna Troi to transport back to the Enterprise. The planet's atmosphere would not allow normal transport.
We can't get a pattern lock on their communicators because of the EM bursts, Captain. There's no way we can beam them out of there, not under these conditions.
The same conditions won't permit a shuttle to land safely, Mr. LaForge. Any suggestions?
Give us a minute, Captain. Sir, let me beam down with a pattern enhancer.
Chief, there's no guarantee you won't rematerialize in a million pieces if your signal gets caught up in that electromagnetic whirlwind.
I can boost the confinement beam. One person might be able to make it.
Captain, Chief O'Brien wants to beam down to the surface with a pattern enhancer. Mr. O'Brien!
Nice of you to join us.
Nice spot for a picnic, sir. We need to distribute these enhancer rods at 7-meter legs. That should do it.
Is this storm front going to interfere with the transport, Chief?
I'd really like to get us out of here before it hits, Commander.
In the TNG episode, ship in the bottle, Professor Moriarty returns from his holodeck slumber and takes over the Enterprise D. He demands that Picard and crew find a way to let him go free with his new girlfriend. This leads Geordi, Data, and Barclay discussing the possibility of transporting matter off of the holodeck through the use of pattern enhancers.
However, if it were possible to lock onto the object, it might rematerialize with the same molecular cohesion as conventional matter.
That's a big leap, Data. I just don't think the transporter is going to accept simulated matter.
Unless we could find a way to compensate for the phase variance, if we could modify the pattern enhancers, we just might do it.
Set the pattern enhancers around whatever object you wish to transport. I will proceed to the transporter room and begin modifications.
Computer, run Sherlock Holmes program 3A.
That program is already in use.
Have you come to see Mr. Holmes or perhaps Professor Moriarty? Neither is in just now.
No. I'm not here to see anyone. I'm just here to deliver these.
Fine. Just, put them anywhere.
Well, actually, I have to put them right here.
How curious. Why is that?
Well, it has to do with, well, it's nothing you need to worry about, Countess. Really.
Are you suggesting that it's beyond my comprehension?
It's really very simple. I need to enhance the molecular pattern of this chair so that the transporter can get a better lock on the signal.
In the TNG episode, Frame of Mind, Riker gets abducted during a mission from Starfleet, and then he gets taken into an asylum-like facility for holding. He gets drugged and undergoes psychological torture in order for his captors to pry information from him. He is eventually saved by Data and Worf, who are acting covertly trying to extract him. They use pattern enhancers in the facility to escape via transporter. But do take note in this scene here, because this is one of the very few times Worf doesn't get his ass handed to him in the TNG days.
Commander.
Get away from me!
Commander, you must come with us. You are in danger here.
No!
Silence.
Commander, are you all right?
Help me! Help me!
Who are you? Take them to security ward.
Warp to Enterprise. The pattern enhancer has been activated. 3 to beam up.
Acknowledged.
In the TNG episode, Inheritance, pattern enhancers are used by Data and his co-creator Mother to beam into the core of planet Atrea 4. The Enterprise D gets sent to this planet to find a solution because the planet's core is rapidly cooling way too fast. Data instead finds out that his so-called mother is actually another Zoom-type android like himself.
More seismic activity. We must hurry.
Can we transport without the pattern enhancers?
No, we are too far below the surface.
How are we going to get down there?
There are no handholds in the rock face. We are going to have to jump.
No, it's too far. I won't make it.
You will.
In the Voyager episode, The Omega Directive, Janeway and crew find one of the most dangerous substances known to exist, the Omega Particle, while on their adventures through the Delta Quadrant. This is a top priority Starfleet issue, and Janeway is sent to recover the particles. Their search leads them to a devastated planet, and pattern buffers are used to teleport the Omega Particle back to Voyager, where Seven is standing by with the machine she had built to hold them.
Set the confinement beam to its narrowest dispersion.
Understood.
We'll target this facility with the gravimetric torpedo. If anything goes wrong during transport, that'll be our only hope.
Bridge to Janeway. We've detected 2 ships on an intercept course. They're not responding to hails.
How long until they get here?
Less than 4 minutes, Captain.
Stand by to transport the molecules directly to the harmonic chamber.
Understood. Bridge to cargo bay.
Yes, Commander.
7, get ready. We'll have to do this quickly.
That's not advisable.
We don't have a choice. The alien ships are on their way.
Then I recommend moving the ship within 5,000 kilometers of the surface.
That'll take us right into the atmosphere. With our shields down, we won't be able to withstand the thermal reaction for more than a few seconds. Then we'll only get one shot at this. Take us in.
Aye, sir.
Transporter status.
Targeting scanners are locked.
Captain, are you ready?
Pattern enhancers are active.
Do it.
We're 11,000 kilometers from the surface. If we get much closer, we'll incinerate.
We're losing structural integrity.
9,000 kilometers.
We're close enough. Energize.
Initiating transport.
The Omega molecules are stable. Transport was successful.
In the Voyager episode, Once Upon a Time, Tom Paris, Tuvok, and Ensign Sarah Wildman crash on a planet in the Delta Flyer because of an ion storm. Even though we don't get to see them here on screen, Janeway and Chakotay use laser drills and pattern enhancers to get a single lock and teleport the entire Delta Flyer safely back to Voyager.
Strickler, we need 3 more phaser drills. You 2, pattern enhancers and med kits.
Aye, sir.
We're going to have to recalibrate these tricorders. Put us with the Alpha team.
Setting coordinates.
Energize.
We're here! We're here! Chakotay to Voyager.
Yes, Commander.
Pattern enhancers are in place. We're ready to transport the flyer.
Locking on. They're in the shuttle bay.
Help. Engage.
In the Voyager episode, Counterpoint, Janeway and crew are stopped by the Devore officials for a brutal and invasive inspection while they were traveling through Devore territory. The Devore are highly against the existence of telepathic beings, such as Vulcans and Betazets. Janeway teleports Tuvok and all of the other telepathic species who are aboard Voyager into the ship's computer buffer until the inspection passes. Once the Devore leave, Janeway and team use pattern enhancers, which are used to help boost the rematerialization process and get Tuvok and the others back.
The Devore vessels are out of range.
Bridge to transporter team. You're clear.
Cargo Bay 1 to Ensign Kim. Pattern enhancers are in place.
Initiating rematerialization sequence.
Harry, I'm routing maximum power to the transporters.
Got it. Align the confinement beam to 10 angstroms. Energizing.
Ensign Kim, the confinement beam is unstable.
We're trying to correct it now.
What's the problem?
We're unable to consolidate their patterns. They've been in suspension too long.
Harry, increase power to the imaging scanners.
Aye, Captain. It's working.
Nice work, Harry. All our guests are present and accounted for.
Captain.
They're gone. For now.
In the two-part Voyager episode, Dark Frontier, in hopes of acquiring a trans-warp coil for Voyager, a piece of Borg technology that will allow Voyager to travel faster than normal warp, Janeway runs crew simulations to practice the theft of the device from a damaged Borg sphere. Pattern enhancers are used in teleporting the coil back to Voyager when found on the Borg sphere.
Bridge to away teams. You're 6 seconds behind schedule. You've got 55 seconds.
The transwarp coil is offline.
Tuvok now.
Activate the charges.
Bridge, their shields are down. Energize.
Tom? I've got a lock. Target obtained.
In the Voyager episode, Friendship 1, Janeway is sent by Starfleet to recover a deep space probe sent out by humanity in 2067. This probe was named Friendship 1. Their search leads them into a war-torn planet where Tom Paris and Neelix get captured, and they are held hostage by the planet's natives. Tuvok and the Doctor come to the rescue, and Chakotay sets up pattern enhancers for the crew's escape.
We need to get him to Voyager.
He stays here.
Mr. Tuvok. Your captain was foolish enough to think she could rescue you. Instead, she's given me another hostage.
Doc? When you need to infiltrate a toxic environment, it helps to be a hologram.
Prepare the transport enhancers. Tuvok to Chakotay. We secured the hostages.
Good work. Chakotay to Delta Flyer. 2 to beam out.
In the Discovery episode, Brother, both Captain Pike and Michael Burnham beam down to a wrecked Federation starship that crashed into an asteroid. They find survivors. Among them is Jet Reno, an engineer who is keeping the critically injured survivors alive. The asteroid itself is headed for a pulsar and will be torn apart, killing everyone on the ship. Michael uses pattern enhancers to both strengthen the signal and transport up to 6 patients back at a time back to the USS Discovery, which is in orbit waiting to receive them.
The pads are still intact. Can we move your patients?
I see, but yeah. Ready?
Set up the enhancers around the ship widest perimeter possible. Then meet us at sickbay. Got it. We're in business.
Why are we moving them if you're creating an enhancement field big enough to beam from anywhere on the ship?
The enhancers are just a backup in case the Hiawatha's main transporter doesn't stay online. Ship-to-ship beaming on the pads is far more reliable, and it'll be safer for your visions. See if you can get that one up.
Where the hell were you 10 months ago?
Once the perimeter's set, we can start beaming them out, 6 at a time. Enhancer field is online.
Let's go!
We have transporter signal, sir. Report impact!
That answer will not hold together much longer. Com, notify Dr. Pollard and have her team ready to receive survivors in the transporter room.
Come on, come on, come on.
First wave of patients on board, Captain. Keep us in transporter range.
And that does it for the technological tidbits for this episode. So, now it's time that we jump into my rating and personal thoughts. Okay, now it's time for the final part of my video review of Deep Space Nine's third season episode, Heart of Stone. It's time to rate the episode versus the IMDb and give a few personal insights about it. Let's take a look. So, the IMDb rates this episode at 7.4 stars and places it at 401 out of the 726 episodes of Star Trek that were produced. They still haven't added Season 2 of Star Trek Discovery to the list, so the list is still at a 726 episode total. In my opinion, this episode deserves way better than this. As I have said before, this episode has equally strong A and B story plots. There's a lot of great information and amazing character building throughout this whole episode. It opens up two very strong story arcs that stay persistent throughout the rest of the series. Nog's journey into Starfleet and Odo's love for Kira. This episode is completely solid all the way around, and its theme carries on throughout the rest of the series. So, I'm going to have to give Heart of Stone an overall Trek score of a solid 8 stars. It's just too important an episode to give it anything less. For my Deep Space Nine Trek score, I'm going to put this episode at 8.5 stars. It's great all around. It's got elements of hopes, dreams, fear, despair, love, mystery, pretty much everything under the sun. Even a little comedy, which comes in the form of good old Quark and his Ferengi contracts. All in all, not only is this episode great, but it's also a very important episode of Star Trek. As I have stated before, in my opinion, DS9 had one of the best, if not the best, science fiction writers' room in all of science fiction television history. Everyone in that room went on to do really great stuff, and this is what makes DS9 so special a show. The writers in the room were amazingly talented. It's not likely that we will ever have another room with such amazingly talented people like this again. It literally was the perfect storm of all sci-fi television writing rooms. And this is the reason why Deep Space Nine will always be my favorite show in all of sci-fi. The writing room, along with the amazing actors, made this show a true gem. And if you ever get the chance, be sure to look up a lot of the other great amazing shows that these writers went on to produce, because a majority of it was phenomenal. So, with all that being said, this concludes my episode review of the third season Deep Space Nine episode, Heart of Stone. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I taught you a couple things along the way. Now, please, if you can, consider donating to Aron and his family to help them through this tragic time. I'm sure they will appreciate any support they can get, as well as check out the 7th Rule podcast. They need your support as well. This is a great Star Trek resource, and everybody should know it. So please go and give them a listen. And also, as always, if you like what I do, please like, comment, and subscribe on this video. Share it and do what you have to do. Don't forget to hit the bell notification so you get alerted when I release more videos. But until next time, my name is Ensign Rickey, your YouTube resident redshirt. This is the Lower Decks, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Peace.